This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
December 2018, the Hard-Traveling Fanboys are celebrating Aquaman Month.
My man.
Welcome, one and all, Place to Be Nation listeners, to a special, scattered, mobile edition, Christmas week edition even, of the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. I am Greg Phillips, coming to you from the road on location, and or actually on various locations as I'm on the road, as previously mentioned. Also, with me, as always, back in Ho-Ho-Loon Plaza, Vancouver, British Columbia. Nick, I'm so glad you made the trip by yourself to check on the studio. Nick Duke, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm here at the studio, and we're having a little bit of a plumbing issue. The dishwasher is broken. Mr. Loon apparently stuffed some dumplings down the drain. There's a big clog being backed up right now. We're having major issues here, folks, but never you mind. When you think of handy, you think of Nick Duke. So here I am doing man's work and fixing things and taking time out from my busy schedule here to talk a little Aquaman.
He sure did, Tony. He sure did. And yes, as Nick mentioned, we are in the middle of, actually not in the middle, we're at the end of Aquaman Month, or if you prefer, Aquaman here at the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. We have dedicated an entire month to DC Comics' King of the Seven Seas, and to wrap it all up, we wanted to bring in Place to Be Nation Comics' very own Aqua expert, a man known, what in the holy hell is that noise? A man known the world over as Arthur Curry's #1 fan, coming to us all the way from the west coast of America. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Weber, the manager himself.
Thank you for having me on for Aqua Month. We've been teasing this appearance for a while. It's so good to be back with my charges, the Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
I'm very much looking forward to this episode because Todd saw the movie a few days ago, but has been suspiciously tight-lipped about his thoughts on the film. So we've all discussed general impressions. Todd has not to this point, and I can't wait to hear what he thought of it.
It's as though nobody has permission to have an opinion about this film before my opinion comes out.
Well, I have an opinion that I've made known. Greg just saw it today, actually, so we'll be getting his hot take first reaction as well. So I'm the only one who's seen it. I saw it Thursday night when it first opened. One of the first showings. I think the second IMAX showing we actually had in Columbus. I caught that, and so I've had a few days to kind of marinate on it a little bit, where you guys are coming at it with a bit more recency. So I'm interested to see what you guys thought of it.
Yes, I watched the film just today with my parents, actually just about a couple hours ago. And Todd, how did you experience the film?
I purchased tickets online. At first I looked at the Amazon Prime doohickey, and that wasn't going to work because the theater was too far away. And all of the good seats were claimed already. So Amazon Prime members were able to attend a special week early screening, but it was only at certain theaters. It was very limited. So my family and I purchased primo seats at our local IMAX theater, downtown Sacramento, and we had 3D. That's the word I was looking for. We experienced in glorious IMAX 3D on Saturday the 22nd at a late night show downtown. It was pretty great. Pretty great experience to go and pay a flat fee for parking. Sacramento's parking situation is just messy. So I don't like getting into town as much anymore. I'm much more of a rural, suburban type. But we went into the city to watch Aquaman, and it was quite the experience for the family.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've heard you referred to in some circles as a suburban commando. Is that fair?
Well, I live in the suburbs, and I quite frequently go commando. So, yes, that's fair.
Very good. That's the kind of information that we like to pull out of our guests here at the Hard-Traveling Fanboys. as our little doohickey says that's attached to the articles where we post our podcasts, we were at one time anyway mild-mannered reporters by day, and these are the hard-hitting questions we like to ask. Another hard-hitting question, Todd. Nick and I have talked about our relatively recent history with Aquaman, kind of coming into it to the character largely with the Jeff Johns run. I think before that we had seen him on Justice League and some of the I've seen him on Smallville, obviously, as AC, which we'll have to talk about sometime. But what was it that drew you to Aquaman at an early age and made him one of your favorite characters?
For most of my youth, Aquaman was not the coolest character. I would say I was more of a Spider-Man fan primarily as a young man. I gravitated towards, the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and I read a lot of Spidey comics back in the early 80s and would read Avengers and Teen Titans and X-Men, of course. But it was the 1986 post-crisis Aquaman miniseries written by Neil Posner and drawn by Craig Hamilton that made me a true Aqua fan. And that remains still my favorite iteration of Aquaman. And there have been many, and we will talk about that. So I've been pretty faithful Aqua reader since then. I bought all the limited run. He had a couple miniseries, and then when Peter David got the Aquaman monthly going again in the early 90s, 94 or so, I was all in on that. That remains one of my favorite series. And then he's been fairly strong, fairly consistent ever since then, even though they've made changes to his character.
Yeah, awesome. That's so you've kind of experienced the character through a surge in popularity, so to speak, and also you've kind of ridden with him as he's kind of been at times a joke in pop culture, and then also become kind of the cool Aquaman that we know today, or cool, as some might say, in the Peter David run, the Jeff Johns run, and etc. So very cool. With all that rigmarole out of the way and the background out of the way, let's get to James Wan's Aquaman. It is currently, as we speak, the #1 movie worldwide at the moment. It has made somewhere north of $500 million worldwide already. This makes a sequel a virtual inevitability. But before we get to all of that, let's talk about the movie itself and kind of expectations versus reality for this one, because this does come attached technically to the rather, shall we say, spotty DC Worlds of Cinematic Extended Universe thing, which of course follows on the heels of Justice League, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, etc. Relative to expectations, what were you thinking? Not relative to, but what were your expectations going in, knowing that this is tied into a movie universe, if you will, that is sort of been flawed from the get-go? And Nick, I'll start with you. You and I have been kind of back and forth on some of these movies, largely down for the most part. But what were your thoughts when Aquaman was announced, and what were your thoughts when you started to see the trailers come out and a little bit more information from it?
Well, when Aquaman was first announced, it was pre-Justice League. Like, we were told that this expansive movie slate was coming, and yes, Batman v Superman had happened, and we've discussed our thoughts on that film. It was very divisive, as it should have been, and probably left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, arguably deservedly so. But the ultimate edition of that film that you and I both saw and reviewed very positively on this podcast kind of helped to right some of those wrongs and left me overall looking forward to the rest of the DC slate. But then as Justice League approached, in the wake of Batman v Superman, and Warner Brothers began to step in, as they often do, and start to move things around, you started to get that sinking feeling like this was not going to go very well. And then when Justice League hit, I thought Aquaman, Jason Momoa in the movie, was one of the bright spots of that movie, but the movie itself was such a jumbled mess to me that my enthusiasm for the entire DC slate going forward was severely lessened. I was pretty down on the idea of DC films in general connected to this larger universe. So as Aquaman began to get closer, I managed to keep my expectations really low, honestly. Like, I knew that there were things in the trailers that were exciting to me. I liked the overall look of it. I liked the color of it. I liked that it seemed to be telling a different kind of story than most films in the DCEU, or whatever we're calling it, had told to this point. But
you liked Amber Heard in the Mira suit.
I liked Amber Heard in the Mira suit, as, quite frankly, I suggest all people should.
You're here.
But I managed to keep my expectations low just because I was convinced that Warner Brothers was going to Warner Brothers at some point and fuck the movie up. So I'm happy to report that relative to expectations, my expectations were vastly, vastly exceeded.
A great segue into Todd. I wanted to, I'm not sure how it was a great segue, but I just wanted to say that as a segue. Todd, yes. Todd, tell me, what were your expectations for the film, given the state of what is left of the DC film universe, and what were your expectations of the movie once we got the trailers and all that?
Each trailer gave me a little bit more hope, a little more optimism that this would be a Warner Brothers hands-off kind of film, that the director would be allowed to execute his or her vision, much like Patty Jenkins was allowed to with Wonder Woman. And I feel that in that way, this film was a tremendous success. We've had a couple of years. Boy, it feels like we've had this movie on the slate for almost 5 years at this point. And so I was looking forward to it for forever. Just having an actual Aquaman movie arrive in cinemas, be able to be seen on the big screen, not go straight to video, whatever, not be a joke as far as getting studio money behind it and having it put onto screen and people showing up and watching it is a tremendous, tremendous success. Because
did you ever think that you would see that?
No, of course not. But then again, these are the days of miracles and wonder. We are seeing things on TV we never thought we'd see. We are seeing things in movies we never thought we'd see. So it goes along. But we Aquaman fans are kind of a pessimistic lot. We've taken a lot of shots over the years, a lot of lumps, and it's just nice that this was allowed to be seen to fruition. And so I didn't have the highest of expectations for it, but like Nick, my expectations were both met and exceeded, and I'm looking forward to expounding on that. Here we go.
Absolutely. I'll echo what both of you guys said. I think my expectations were grounded both by the failures of previous DC movies and also by the general perception of Aquaman in pop culture. I worry that they would have a hard time overcoming that in a movie. And like you guys, my expectations were vastly exceeded. I was not expecting quite the movie that we got there, which is not to say it was perfect, but I thought it was damn entertaining. And let's get to that movie. So this is a film that is telling largely its own story, kind of drawing on the decades of Arthurian legend, if you will, for comic book fans, about the history of Arthur Curry. We've got various origins over the time for Aquaman, and this movie kind of picks and chooses. It draws heavily on the Jeff Johns New 52 run, but also draws some elements from other runs as well. But again, a lot of this is out of those early volumes of Jeff Johns' New 52 Aquaman, which was already very cinematic. But we get an interesting way to do Aquaman's origin, in that we start with him narrating the tale of how his parents met. And this kind of sets us up an interesting framing device for the movie involving, and this is a good thing for me to say, there will be spoilers here. We will try not to spoil the entire movie for people that haven't seen it yet. We're going to try not to do that, but it's going to be impossible for us to not accidentally slip up here and there and to blatantly spoil some other things. So keep that in mind as you go along. Anyway, we do get a framing sequence here that kind of sets up the movie around the love story of Tom Curry and Queen Atlanta, who is played by Nicole Kidman. And Tom Curry is played by Nick, that guy.
Tamara Morrison.
Django Fett.
Very good. Django Fett.
Yes. And also, I believe, Abin Sur.
Yes.
In the Green Lantern film.
Yes, I think that's right. And he plays the lighthouse keeper, who is Arthur's father, of course. and it sets a really what I thought was one of the best portions of this film was the love story between these two, and how everything comes full circle through the course of the film. What did you guys make of instead of starting the movie with, and I actually thought it was kind of a neat homage, perhaps, in that, we've just read a story, Nick and I, where Arthur is, washed up on these rocks about to die before he's rescued by dolphins. And we see Queen Atlanta washed up on rocks about to die at the beginning of this film. So what did you guys make of this opening sequence instead of going for a traditional, here is the birth of Arthur, here is him as a kid, a linear origin story for Aquaman? Instead, we largely get it in flashbacks through the course of the movie, through this framing sequence of him narrating his history. What did you guys think of all that?
Well, I'll say, like, as much as I enjoyed various other things throughout the movie that we're going to talk about, honestly, I think, like, this framing sequence, and specifically the Tom and Atlanta relationship, might have wound up being my favorite thing in the movie. Like, I think it's the thing that works better on an emotional level than anything else they're trying to do. And it's easily, of the two romances that are in the film, the more believable and, the one you wind up caring more about as an audience member. So I thought this was a really cool and inventive way to showcase a little bit of what the Atlanteans were all about, rather than just throwing you full on into Atlantis right from the jump. You got to see a little Atlantean tech with the soldiers and stuff that show up to take her back. You got to see Nicole Kidman being an utter badass in her one action sequence there. And you got a really believable and sympathetic romance there in in the span of 10 minutes. So I was a big fan of both the open to this film with those two and the close to this film with those two.
Oh, hey, spoiler alert.
Yes. Again, spoilers abound, ladies and gentlemen.
So,
Todd, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Nick and you, Greg, that this was probably the most successful part of the film. And to me, I was very unexpectedly surprised by how well they executed it and how much I bought in. They told that portion of the story in a quick amount of time. I will say I am a fan of the way they let the story unfold, not in a chronological sense, but jumping around. And that makes sense because we've already been introduced to Arthur a couple times. Now, I tried to avoid spoilers here and there, so I did not know that they were going to do the New Hampshire Mercy Reef locale. I was thinking, oh, well, they're going to make him, since they've cast New Zealand actor Tamura Morrison, they're going to make him Polynesian truly, not American Polynesian, but there. So I had no idea that it was going to be as faithful to that part of the story as it was. And the chemistry they had was great. Nicole Kidman was outstanding in her role.
Yes, she was.
And so since Nick already spoiled it, with the flashback and the de-aging effects, which were done very well, I kind of it tipped my hand that, well, she's not really dead. And we can say that it made sense, and we all kind of knew that she wasn't really dead. They didn't show the death on screen, and so we assumed she'll be back. But if they had cast an older actress and then de-aged her, and then you don't show her in the current age, what's the point? So that kind of, thinking about that kind of spoiled it for me. But I really was happy with the amount of respect that was shown to that part of the origin. It really was well done, and watching it for the first time with my new eyes, I was very happy that this was given that level of respect and treatment by Juan. And I'm going to go out and say it. These are the two best parents we've seen in the DCEU / Worlds of DC. So Tom Curry's a better dad than Jonathan Kent. Deal with it.
A topic perhaps to be touched on at another time. Nick, your thoughts on that?
That's a shot at Nick.
I'm a big fan of both the Kents from Man of Steel, as I've said.
Yeah, me too.
I won't argue that they have bungled some interesting stuff to do with Ma Kent in the wake of that in subsequent films. But I also like T'Polta a great deal in Wonder Woman. So, but I'll agree with you. These guys were outstanding. These two actors.
Oh yeah,
these two characters. nothing bad to say here, really.
Yeah, they are great parents. You're right about that. One of the great things, Todd, about this movie was something that we're kind of in some ways robbed of seeing in pretty much all Superman movies to this point, which is a friendly relationship with his parents. Like, I love the scene towards the beginning of this movie where Arthur and Tom are just, pounding down beers at the bar. I thought that was an awesome scene, just to show that there is no dysfunctional relationship here. There are no daddy issues, as there are with a lot of DC characters and Marvel characters for that matter. There's just this familial relationship between them. Despite losing his mother at an early age, he holds no resentment towards his father. In fact, his dad's like his best friend. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and you catch the subtle tattoo on Tom Curry. That's a family crest that Momoa has, and then they brought that into the film. So I appreciated that too. Again, I did not even think that Morrison was going to be that big of a part of the story, and he was great. I really liked the bar scene as well, and having been lucky enough to go out and drink with my dad once in a while, I appreciated that quite a bit. Even though I don't get people coming up to me for my autograph very often.
Well, they should. If they listened to our podcast, they would, my friend. But unfortunately, they don't. So we also are introduced around this time to the young boy version of Arthur Curry. This is the scene that we've seen, I think, in the trailers, where he's kind of getting picked on at the aquarium, and it's the first time that we see his sort of supernatural abilities on display. And this was one of a couple of things that I will nitpick a little bit. This scene was, while I liked the scene, the kid was not, I don't know, maybe it's a thing with me and some child actors, but the kid wasn't as convincing as some of the other child actors that I've seen in these movies recently. What did you guys think?
As much as you're nitpicking this kid, I thought teenage Arthur was so much worse, honestly.
Really?
I didn't buy that kid for a second. And he always had like this annoying, bitchy look on his face, to the point where every time they did one of those teenage Arthur flashbacks, it took me completely out of the movie. Mainly because they would come in the middle of scenes, and they didn't really seem to serve a point other than to establish that he and Volko had a relationship prior to his coming to Atlantis as an adult.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that seemed to be the only point of those films. Yeah, you can do that in one scene. You don't need it in 6 or 7, especially. I would argue the dialogue in those scenes were the lowest points for the dialogue in the film, like overly obvious and beat you about the head and neck area with its point, and not really sold to any degree by the teenage version of the character. So I think overexposing the teenage version as compared to this child version, which I believe was only in the one scene, that wound up irking me a lot more than this child version.
Yeah, listen, I still like the scene. Go ahead, Todd.
I'm going to say that they were consistent with the level of performance that noted bad dialogue reader Jason Momoa gave. So Jason Momoa is not a tremendous actor by any stretch of the word. Now, he's charismatic. The soccer moms love him. You root like hell for him because he embodies the hero, and he you buy into him accepting his responsibility and becoming this hero. But when it comes to actual dialogue, especially in the scenes between he and Amber Heard, I was taken way out of it because he's just not that. He's a bro dude, and that's the characterization of him. That's who Momoa is. And anytime they had to go a little deeper in the dialogue, I mean, give me a break. I got a little frustrated with that because Momoa himself is not the best reader of dialogue in acting. So I'm okay with the kids because they weren't they were about the same level of actor as Momoa was in that aspect of things.
That's fair. That's fair to say. I think and that's a great way to segue into Jason Momoa in general, who plays our breastular character Aquaman. We've seen him a little bit in Justice League as our Aquaman, obviously, but this is his first chance to really carry the weight of a movie. And to your point, Todd, he certainly exposed some of his weaknesses here in terms of he's not going to be able to give you the level of nuanced performance that someone like a Ben Affleck or even a Henry Cavill can give you in a certain role. And he's not going to be able to certainly reach the heights that we saw in the Nolan movies of that level of nuance and detail. However, what I thought he did in this movie was what we've seen in some of the Marvel movies, not maybe to the same degree as some of those great castings have been, but in the way that a person just embodies a character and takes it over and owns it. I thought he did a great job in that regard.
Absolutely.
Like you said, embodying the hero, using his natural charisma that he undoubtedly has to bring a version of Aquaman to screen that feels legitimate, that feels authentic to what we know from the comic books, and to bring him to life in a way that we maybe wouldn't have imagined. So yeah, I think all of that is very fair criticism that he's certainly not going to, he's going to sound out of his element when he's delivering the more, I think, political and maybe more Atlantean side of Arthur. But I think he's at his best when he's in those big heroic moments. And I think he embodied that well. But Nick, what were your thoughts on Momoa as Aquaman?
It's a little interesting because I'm not nearly the Aquaman enthusiast that Todd is, but I have to say, and this is something that I thought of, that occurred to me even during Justice League, as much as I overall enjoyed his presence in Justice League, I'm largely familiar with the character through the Jeff Johns and Dan Abnett interpretations, the most recent interpretations of the character. And this is not that. It's very, as Todd said, it's very dude bro. It's very different. Mm-hmm. It's trying to appeal to I don't really know what kind of demographic it's trying to appeal to, but it's a demographic that I'm not in. Like, I don't feel like I am the target audience for this particular portrayal or interpretation of Aquaman. I'm only in the demographic because I like comic books and I like Aquaman, not because I like, this particular version. So overall, I think the performance was good. I think he did a good job of portraying the character he was being asked to portray. Now, in a perfect world, do I wish we had gotten something more traditional or more like the Arthur Curry of the comics? Yeah, but I can't say that I disliked this. And I understand why they made the move. Aquaman is a character that I think you can get away with changing up a little bit just because he doesn't have the profile of a Batman or a Superman or a Spider-Man or what have you. And using an actor of Polynesian descent, especially for a character who's so closely tied to the ocean, makes a lot of sense. So all things considered, I'm going to go a slight thumbs up on this one for Momoa in general. I will say that I enjoyed the movie a good deal, and I feel like if it weren't for his natural charisma, I probably would have enjoyed the movie far, far less. If they had tried to get somebody else to do this same version of Aquaman, I don't know that I would have enjoyed it as much. Perhaps that's the most ringing endorsement of it.
I agree. I mean, you cannot picture anybody else as Aquaman in a movie like this with that characteristic or with those characteristics. You can try to plug in somebody else and it becomes a completely different movie. He's obviously fully committed to the role. He's having the time of his life. You do buy into him as this guy who takes the ocean seriously, Atlantis seriously, his responsibilities of being a hero seriously, and even he expresses remorse for what happens with Black Manta's dad. I mean, you see an actual arc well executed in this character that you maybe saw it in Wonder Woman a bit, but you didn't see it in Man of Steel. Snyder's telling that story in 3 movies, and unfortunately, the third movie was really, really a bad representation of that. So, no, I think he was successful, and Aquaman, you can get away with that, like Nick said, because there is no one version of Aquaman that rings true with the public consciousness yet. There's Super Friends Aquaman, which I guess is the closest thing to being out there. Before this, there was AC, who you could say AC was a bit of a dude bro in his own way.
Yes,
too.
I would agree. Yeah.
So I'm good with it too. And again, it got eyes on the movie that you would not normally see. My friend from Oklahoma went and saw this, and she was, because 2 words, Jason Momoa. She was there because of the sex appeal of the actor. So there you go. There you have it.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon an interesting thing there. I think Jason Momoa, Nick said reaching out to a different demographic, but I think he is a big reason for this movie's success. I think if this had been kind of a more traditional superhero movie with a more traditional actor, it maybe wouldn't have had the kind of appeal that it is. Like at the movie theater I was at today, it was one of the widest cross sections of people that I've seen at a non-Marvel movie. The other DC movies that I've seen at the theater have been largely people that look like us. So,
now what does that mean?
Well, I mean, older, fatter, people.
I will say Wonder Woman was not that way.
Worst demographic ever.
Yeah. This was much like Wonder Woman in that the demographic was very different than something like, say, even Justice League, which is trying to be, fairly representative for all people, having, Cyborg and this version of Aquaman in it. I'll agree with that.
And so, I think his appeal in general, the sex appeal is a big part of it for him. It reached out to a different crowd. So very cool. Well, we haven't talked yet about if you're going to have an Aquaman, you have to have Mera. She's become, particularly in the modern era, just as important, really, to Aquaman stories as Aquaman himself, sometimes more so. And in this case, we got Amber Heard as Mera. She, again, appeared rather briefly in Justice League and certainly had some sex appeal of her own. We can all agree on that. But what did you guys think about how she embodied a character that has grown to become one of all 3 of our favorites in DC Comics?
Yeah, I dug this portrayal. I can't say that she was given the best dialogue at times. I think there were a lot of times where I kind of sat there going, well, the Mera I know wouldn't do this or do that or say this or say that. Mm-hmm. But I have to understand this is the opening salvo for this character, hopefully. The idea is, in theory anyway, that we will gradually move towards a Mera that is more recognizable to modern day comics as we go forward, because it's something that I think would be welcome and appreciated in today's day and age, given the success of Wonder Woman and various other female-led properties. I think there's a market for it. But the moments where she got to cut loose, especially as it related to her power set, I think the first time when she winds up saving Arthur early in the film, there closely after the bar scene, that she gets to display some of her powers for the first time, I was popping big time for it. Like, it was just one of those examples of something I've I've wanted to see on the screen for a long time and never really thought I would. And I was very pleased with the way they handled her power set and kind of made her at least a physical badass. If I think in actions and portrayal, attitude, she could have stood to be a bit more aggressive for my taste. But all things considered, another thumbs up here on this portrayal.
Yeah, I dug her too. I thought I thought it was a really cool version of Mera that we saw. Again, not quite as much of an aggressive personality, but yet we say that, and yet she's really the mover of a lot of the plot of this. She makes the move to abandon her throne, so to speak, as princess of Zebel to save Arthur and go on the lam, basically. And I thought the best Mera stuff in the movie for me was when she went to the stuff in Italy, when she's kind of experiencing the surface world for the first time, and it's not quite what she expected it to be. She's actually enjoying the culture and the way things operate there. And then the scene where she takes the wine out of the bottle and turns them into daggers and finishes off the Atlantean soldiers, that was pretty cool too. But Todd, what were your thoughts on this version of Mera as it relates to her historically in the comics, and just in general what you wanted to see from the character?
Well, they got the look right and they got the powers right. Definitely, I will say that. It would work a lot better for me if, how do I say this? There was a Mera that I wanted to see on screen, somebody with the attitude, fighting spirit of Mera, but that character was Atlanta. Does that make sense?
Sure.
That rings a lot truer to what I visualize, and having read the character for 30 plus years as even now. But they can play the long game with this character, especially now that they're going to get a sequel. So I wasn't thrilled, especially when it was just she and him talking. The interesting shade of red hair, the unnatural shade of red hair every time they were out of water kind of threw me off, took me out of it just a little bit. Looked fine underwater, especially in Atlantis, and I liked the outfits that they would put her in. Especially liked when she put on her crown, her tiara, in the one scene. That was great. But I was not as high on her, I guess, as you guys. But boy, I loved the way they showed her powers. I loved the way that she cuts a contrast to Arthur. And yeah, she's there. I think there was a little bit, because I saw Justice League day of release and I was very geeked and disappointed by that film. I'm getting the continuity really bugs me. The continuity issues they have between Justice League and Aquaman. And I don't know if I'm not hearing a ton of people talk about it, but maybe
go ahead.
We should. Okay, so
yeah.
where does the Justice League scene fit in? Seeing that we meet Mira for the first time. Whoa, who are you? Do they put that scene in the middle of this movie? Did that scene never happen? Is this movie kind of an Elseworlds?
Well, they mention in a throwaway line at some point that I think she says to him when she's trying to recruit him when he's going to the truck with his dad, she says, "You defeated Steppenwolf."
Right. So they did refer to that happening. And then why doesn't he remember her or Atlantis or getting that armor? You know, so those little things, I mean, in the big picture, Justice League is not going to be as well remembered as this movie is.
I think the idea, and they've kind of said this going forward, is for the time being, continuity between the films is not really a concern. I think Justice League bombing and being, or not bombing, I mean, call it what you will, but underwhelming to the degree that it did, has led DC to kind of tell these filmmakers, just worry about making your movie right now and don't worry about how it fits in. And James Wan took that and basically did what he wanted to with it, is my understanding, is what it read like to me anyway. And so, to be honest, I don't really, if like, my concern with the entire film slate going forward since Justice League has been, how can you build upon a flawed foundation? And what this seems to do is ditch the foundation. Like, the only real tie it is that it has the same actors in it. Other than that, like it doesn't really seem to be making any sort of attempt to tie in heavily to the films that have preceded it. And I would argue, you know, Wonder Woman and, again, controversially, Man of Steel notwithstanding, that's probably a good move, because it was clear that for all the positive aspects, and there were some, even in Justice League and even in Batman v Superman, people were not catching on to this universe. They were not attaching themselves. And so I think distancing yourself from that for now is probably the right move. And so I was kind of into the approach they took of just, you know what? Screw it. It wasn't working. Let's not saddle ourselves with that baggage.
Baggage, yes. That's a good way to describe it, is baggage. But yeah, I will say, to Todd's point, the one bit of continuity that did like strike me during the film, and I agree it's the right move, because at this point, I think they're going to try to distance themselves from Justice League as much as possible, and from the Zack Snyder stuff in general. But I think the part for me, Todd, that stood out to me is after what we saw in Justice League and how it ended, if like this giant war is coming to the surface world, where Orm is going to lead the armies of Atlantis together to destroy. Why doesn't Arthur pick up the phone and call Bruce and say, "Hey, Bruce, this thing's happening. You might want to get Clark and Diana over here and the other kid."
I would think two of the three would already know. You know, Superman with his super senses, and Wonder Woman is tied in, and she certainly knew of Atlantis. She would know that this stuff was going on, but those are minor quibbles, honestly, to me. They really are.
Yeah, and you can ask a similar question about, you know, any of the MCU films as well.
That's true. I mean,
yeah, you know, like, it's just one of those things.
Well, yeah, that's fair. So we've got Arthur and Mira out of the way. Who else do we have to get on the cast? Why we need to talk about the primary villain of the piece, who is Ocean Master, Orm, and this is really about his quest to become Ocean Master over the course of the film. And that really, as I'm talking about that, it really dawns on me that really we get a triple sort of origin story of sorts here. We get an Arthur Curry journey to becoming Aquaman, the Aquaman, the King of Atlantis Aquaman anyway. We get Orm's journey to becoming Ocean Master, and we get Black Manta's journey to becoming, well, Black Manta. And that we'll get to him in just a moment. But Patrick Wilson, who we know from other comic book movies in the past, primarily Watchmen, most famously, pops in here and, to me, does a really good job, as he always does. Patrick Wilson's been one of my kind of favorite mid-tier actors for a long time. He's one of those guys that he's never going to be the lead star of a big, blockbuster film, but he's going to do a good job generally every time he gets a chance. And I thought he was really good here as the kind of scheming, angry, but yet not completely 100% heel Orm. He's a heel, no doubt, but he's not like the animated Throne of Atlantis Orm where he is cartoonishly evil. There are moments of vulnerability here, moments of doubt in him. And I thought Patrick Wilson did a great job of portraying this character while making clear that he is definitely the bad guy of this piece. What did you guys think of Patrick Wilson as Orm and the decision to go with him as the lead villain also? And I'll start with you on that one, Todd, because Aquaman has two sort of primary historic villains, I guess, which would be Black Manta and Ocean Master. And we see them both here. What did you make of the decision to go with Ocean Master as the villain, and how do you think they portrayed that?
I think it's a smart choice just because Black Manta had a little bit more of public recognition from the old Super Friends cartoons. Ocean Master, you have a lot more of a story you can tell. I agree with you. They didn't quite Killmonger him, but they gave him a lot more character than you might have expected. He gave him an arc and gave him a logical reason to stand down at the end, too. An unexpected ending, honestly, for me, which I was very happy to see that they did.
I loved that.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that made me the most excited coming out of this film is the one aspect of Ocean Master that I felt like we didn't get in this was I love the Jeff Johns interpretation where you get this idea that there is genuine affection between he and Arthur. Like, these two actually do respect each other and love each other on some level. It's just they have different viewpoints on things, and circumstances have led them to where they are. And I love the idea of keeping him on the board and potentially developing that relationship into something more familial in future films.
And that one line from Arthur at the end where he says, "When you're ready, let's talk." Yeah, that was really a lot for me. I really enjoyed that.
I like how Arthur had always known about him and had looked forward to meeting him. He was excited to have a brother. He was an only child. So I like that too.
Absolutely. And Todd, what did you think about when we see that journey to becoming Ocean Master? How was that portrayed? Was that pretty close to what we've seen in the comics? I've only encountered Ocean Master through the Jeff Johns run, really.
Usually we see Ocean Master a couple of movies away from this, where there is no hope for redemption. He's gone full crazy heel. I like what they've done with him here. I do think that just the kind of invented mythology of becoming Ocean Master, if you unite 4 of the 7, I get to be this. It's like an achievement, a game achievement or something. Title that was thrown in just to justify having the title Ocean Master. So that was okay, but I loved the look of him. I liked his character. I liked how he interacted with the other figureheads of the 7 kingdoms, or at least the ones we saw, we were exposed to. So
glad you brought that up.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Boy, he looked. If you were just to look at a black and white still of blonde, very clean shaven, athletic Patrick Wilson in this and say, "Oh, it's an Aquaman movie," from 10 years ago.
Right.
You think that's your Aquaman. So this is kind of Juan saying it doesn't, that this is going to throw your expectations out of the water.
And near the end, when he's in the traditional Ocean Master costume, I thought that looked awesome. I thought that closing sequence where we get to see both of them in their traditional comics garb, that was easily the best bit of costume design in the movie to me. I was surprised at how good that looked on screen. Because let's be honest, those are 2 costumes that 15, 20 years ago we would have dismissed and say, oh, that would never work on screen. But I think audiences have been conditioned to such a degree now that when that happened, I think everyone in our theater at least bought into it. It was a cool thing to see.
Yep, same here. Same experience at ours. I totally agree with you guys that costume was much better than I was expecting, because it's Ocean Master has got a costume that looks so impractical on the printed page, But then you see it, and it's like, oh, I could buy that in the context of this movie. It looked great, and
same with Black Manta, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes, So let's transition over to Black Manta before we get to Nick's
one last thing.
What Nick wants to talk about. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm glad that they went with Ocean Master, and because he was the only villain we see, well, besides a magical trench-like force that was in this. Going back to my Aquaman roots, where he leveled up for me was that 86 series, and that was a story about then Arthur Curry. It was before they called him Orin. I was about to call him Orin. And Orm, and getting down to the brother aspect of things. And so I've always held him to the level of, Aquaman. I was about to say Batman. Aquaman has two primary villains, and I think it's good because you have less of a story. How do I say this? Like I was saying earlier, it's easier to get into Black Manta. You understand that character a little faster. Because of the contrasts he has with Aquaman and Orm. I think you have to go from do a little bit more groundwork, give him more of an arc. And so, I was quite glad they used, and specifically I was glad because it goes back to my 1986 Aquaman miniseries that changed everything for me with Aquaman.
Fantastic. That's good stuff, man. That's great. You're right about that. The Black Manta is a much more instantly identifiable. Okay, this is why he's Aquaman's villain. So I think this is a good route to go to establish what makes Orm tick and makes their relationship interesting. Well, let's move on to Black Manta, a character that, as Nick alluded to, is one that could very easily look awesome on the big screen or very easily have looked horrible on the big screen and laughable. And to their credit, I thought they did an awesome job with making Black Manta look phenomenal in this movie. Obviously, we have to see him go on his journey to become that character. I thought the stuff on the pirate ship was excellent at the beginning of the movie when they take over the sub. And, we see there were two important parts of that scene, which is, of course, the father's death. But I would point to before the father's death, the scene where Manta kills the sub captain, because it establishes that Arthur is while Arthur is the reason that he becomes obsessed with killing him, becomes Black Manta, he's not the reason that this guy is a bad guy. This guy was already a ruthless killer before he ever encountered Aquaman. But it's just now he has a personal vendetta against Aquaman. So I really enjoyed all that stuff. Before I get into any more on this, I want to let you guys kind of take over because I'm talking too much at the beginning of these segments, I guess. But Nick, why don't you start out with your thoughts on Black Manta in this movie?
Yeah, I liked him overall. I thought the actor who portrayed him did a pretty good job. And as you said, that opening scene kind of set the table for showing that character had a ruthless edge to begin with. And when you combine a ruthless edge with a believable motivating factor, then you have the makings of an understandable villain that's a legitimate threat to someone like Aquaman. The action sequence with he and Arthur in Italy as well was very well done. My only concern with it is Arthur has pretty well handled him twice in the early stages of this film franchise. So I wonder what they're going to do to make him seem like more of a threat going forward, because I think we're all assuming that he's going to be the primary antagonist in the sequel, right? Or at least we would think so anyway. And having Arthur already hand his ass to him twice kind of makes you wonder, how do they go about rebuilding him as a legitimate threat in the eyes of the audience? But that admittedly is a nitpick. The costume, which I would argue is probably the most ridiculous thing that is popular in Aquaman comics, wound up really working on the big screen. I absolutely dug it. I thought it was silly and over the top in all the right ways when it finally debuted, and I'm all in on wanting to see more. I hope that we get to see Black Manta kind of become a genuine badass in the next one that can whoop some Aquaman ass when the time comes.
And I think to play off of what you were saying, maybe the route they go with him is to add to the strategist level to him that we've seen kind of in the Dan Abnett comics in recent memory, where he forms more of a plan of attack rather than just going for the jugular. But yeah, and the one thing that I will say, I thought the actor was a little up and down. Like, there were moments when he was great, or at least good, really good, and then I thought there were a couple of moments where he came off kind of wooden. But I definitely think there's enough to work with there moving forward. Todd, what did you make of Black Manta?
Yeah, the actor didn't bother me so much, and nothing about him bothered me other than we saw most of the Black Manta story in the trailers. We got to see a lot of the fight scene already, although it was great to find out, that this was Atlantean technology powering his helmet, and they did a great job of bringing what should be a ridiculous looking thing into the cinema, and it looked fantastic to me. I liked that story, but once we realized that he was kind of the mid-level villain for this film, which I wasn't necessarily believing or understanding going into it. I thought it was going to be, an alliance or something. And even though it was an alliance, it was definitely, this is your A boss and this is your B boss, your big boss later. No, I like especially where they left him for the second movie.
Yes.
He has more motivation for revenge. That mid-credit scene, especially if you've read the Jeff Johns run, made you go, okay, very good. So yeah, I was fine with Black Manta. I just wish that we hadn't seen so much of him in the trailer, if that was all we were going to get of him in the movie.
Right. Yeah, that's true. We did get the a lot of that Sicily scene was in the trailer in particular. But yeah, good stuff overall. And I'm like you. I'm excited for where they go. I will say, be sure to sit through the credits on this one. I know some DC movies have not had mid-credit scenes or end-credit scenes. This one, however, you will want to sit through and enjoy.
And this character, Black Manta, you could see working with, whether we'll ever see it or not, the Legion of Doom that they were setting up at the end of Justice League.
100%.
And I hope we do get to see it, minus one particular inclusion.
Yeah, you mean minus the guy that founds it and forms it?
Minus Michael Cera.
Yes.
I don't know. Come on, you don't want to watch. Michael Cera clone feed Jolly Ranchers to Deathstroke and Black Manta.
And not to mention, Eisenberg's going to be real busy. That Zombieland sequel thing apparently is finally happening, so let's hope he'll go off and do that instead.
Yeah. Hey, maybe we'll get Michael Rosenbaum. That's just who we always rumor to be Lex Luthor every time we talk about it on the show. So,
I thought it was Bryan Cranston that we always like.
Oh, yeah, Bryan Cranston was the other guy who would have been much better than what we got. Yeah,
he would have been phenomenal. Yeah.
So, let's see. We've gotten pretty much all the main characters discussed here.
There's one we haven't talked about. He's more of a supporting character.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Volko.
Oh yes, played by the great. As I'm coming around on him in my old age, guys. Played by the great Willem Dafoe.
Oh my goodness! Never mind. It's been added to the schedule now. It's time, Greg, to revisit. It's time for you to revisit and eat your own words about some Green Goblin in the original Sam Raimi's.
This is going to be destroying 15 plus years of hard traveling continuity, Nick.
I know it is, but it's time. It is time to rewrite history, my friend.
Willem Dafoe, of course, a great actor known for movies such as Platoon, that movie where he smiles really weird and it created that awesome GIF out of it.
Boondock Saints, of course. But yes, he here plays Volko, who sort of trains Arthur as he ages in the ways of Atlantean combat. And also is one of the supporting figures here, trying to stop Orm from warring with the surface world. Volko, I thought was really good here. The whole time I kept wondering, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this, where I kept wondering if we were going to get the sort of two-faced version of Volko, or whether we were going to get right, and the turn never came. So I was really impressed with how they portrayed that character, Willem Dafoe in particular, and became a Willem Defriend to Arthur. What did you guys make of Volko in this movie? I tended to enjoy him, other than, as I mentioned earlier, the aforementioned flashback scenes. I just felt like they didn't add much. I will say that I thought the de-aging effect was pretty good. Not quite Marvel, MCU level good. They've kind of perfected that, but still a really cool effect that was done. And much like you, Greg, I kept waiting for a turn, but I almost wonder if that didn't wind up, kind of helping the movie a little bit. Because
yes, agreed.
For people who are fans of the comics, we're kind of on the edge of our seats for all these Volko scenes. It kind of adds a bit of drama and suspense to his involvement in the film that ultimately doesn't wind up paying off, but it makes you wonder how they can work that into subsequent films. So I would say our knowledge of the comics is one of the rare areas where that actually enhanced our enjoyment of this particular subplot, even though it didn't really inform what was happening on screen.
Well, there was a turn with Volko. He just turned face, I guess.
Right.
He turned against Orm, or at least Orm exposed him. He was always that way, I guess, but kind of like a Snape type character. Mm-hmm. And there I go, spoiling Harry Potter for you all. I did not enjoy Volko in this film.
Really? Interesting.
It took me, his wide grin and his method of speaking took me out of the film entirely, Arthur. The training, it took me out. The Brooklyn accent, everything about it. Just, he looked great. What can I say? He looked fit as a fiddle, but it was distracting to me. And they cast that role a long time ago. He was cast before almost anybody else in the film was cast. He was initially supposed to be in Justice League. So, yeah, I just had a hard time with it. And I'm used. I'm from the days when Volko was a big fat dude too, with a goatee.
Yeah. We've been enjoying his giant lower body in the Peter David run. His very Volstagian type figure.
So I've never heard him with that particular inflection in my reading. So it was a different characterization. It might have been a fine performance, but it just got so I got so taken out of it because it was stunt casting to me. It was like putting Christopher Walken in the same role. Would not have worked either, but that was the level of distraction.
Now I kind of want to see it.
We are who we choose to be, Arthur. Yeah, there was a little bit.
It's
of that.
coming, Greg. I'm adding that to the schedule.
And Walken would have been great. That would have been fun in its own way. But yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying, Todd. I enjoyed it. It worked for me. I thought he did a good job. But I could see if your expectations were in one direction, then certainly that would have. He was very Willem Dafoe. What can you say? He is who he is at this point in his career. But he's not the only sort of prominent actor in a supporting role. We also had the King of Zebel portrayed here by Dolph Lundgren, who has recently had another role in a hit movie in Creed 2.
2018 is the year of the Lundgrenaissance, as I have termed it.
And the Lundgrenaissance.
And I hope it lasts for a decade.
That's right. He also appeared again earlier in this year, calendar year, I think, on Arrow as Konstantin Kovar before he got taken off the board. So, Dolph Lundgren in this role. And I thought he was, again, I'm biased because I love the guy, but I thought he was great in this role. He didn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting, but I thought he was not playing Dolph Lundgren in this movie. He was not playing Ivan Drago or this big lumbering figure. He was playing this confident royal aristocrat figure. And again, I thought they salvaged his character a little bit with when he looks up and he sees Orm attacking that sub, and they focus on his face, and they come back to that later in the movie with a line of dialogue from Mara where she tells him, you're not one to be deceived so easily, something along those lines. And he kind of nodded at her like he just wanted this war to happen because it was time for it to happen. I thought, so as far as performance goes, I thought he was outstanding. The one thing that didn't work for me about his character is how quickly he just is convinced that Arthur is the one true king at the end. He's just like, well, he's got the trident. The half-breed's the king. All right, I changed my entire course of action. That was a little rushed in a movie that was pretty long on runtime at that point. Todd, what were your thoughts on Dolph in this role?
I thought he was just about perfect. As far as his about face at the end, Arthur Curry has Excalibur. Arthur Curry has Mjolnir here. This has been a 10,000 year long quest for these people to get this fabled weapon, and it's a thing of myth, a thing of legend, and it's gonna make you. What bothered me about Dolph Lundgren was his dentures. Like, where do you get those down there? But he was otherwise really good, really, really good. In fact, I'm happy for the dude that he's getting work.
Yeah,
and being good and not stunt casting or anything.
Right, I agree with that. Nick, your thoughts on the Lundgren Renaissance?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. I like you. I can kind of understand your criticism of the reface turn at the end being a bit sudden, but overall, I dug his involvement in this film. I bought when he and Mira were having conversations that there was a deep tie there. I could see them portraying father and daughter. I enjoyed everything involving him, and I'm hoping they find a way to involve him further in the sequel. But I think that naturally segues into another aspect of this film I wanted to touch on, because he is portrayed as the leader of Zebel. I loved the gimmick of the 7 kingdoms of the ocean, and how each was visually distinctive from one another, particularly the Fisherman King, or whatever, the Fisher Kingdom, or whatever it was called. Mm-hmm. That was great. Just the whole idea of having these 7 different unique realms, here I go, kingdoms with their own unique culture. It was something really cool to see, and something that perhaps we should have seen in other Marvel movies that have a tie there. So I dug that entire presentation. I thought it helped to visually distinguish Aquaman from other DC films by portraying, as I explained to my wife, who was kind of not as high on the movie as I was like, well, part of Aquaman is it's almost like you can tell this entire mythology unto itself. And I thought it was cool that you were able to put a little bit of that on screen. Granted, not quite enough. You didn't really explore any of these in depth, and I hope you get the opportunity to do that in the future, but it was still cool to see it acknowledged.
Yes, whether it was the brine, whether it was the Fisher King, the Fisherman King, that they looked so distinct, as you pointed out, and so visually interesting. It reminded me, Nick, of what drew us to Green Lantern all those years ago. Just the sense of wonder, and I even love the cultural aspect of it. The fact that I think you said the Fisherman King, they were like, it's almost like a Sparta versus Athens thing. The Athenians are very poetic and very intellectual thinkers, and the Spartans are more have a warrior mentality. And I thought it was very interesting in that regard, and really well done all around. Todd, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Atlantis has evolved a lot in the comics over the years. Back in my Crisis on Infinite Earths days, there were 3 domed kingdoms of Atlantis, and we're going to talk more about the visual aspects of this film, but I really dug how each kingdom was given its own thing, and it set it up very well. I loved the statue work and the way they would give you this. Keep saying they. The way that Juan presented this lived-in Atlantis, I loved it. I enjoyed all of the flashbacks to Atlan, the wizard, more of a king than a wizard here. But I think that I wanted maybe a little bit more of a description of each one beforehand, because it was hard to keep them all straight, maybe a little bit. As you got to each place, okay, it's this one, it's the trenches one, and here's the fishermen people, and then here's the crustaceans. It was pretty, what's the name?
Who were pretty cool.
They were great. I'm glad they waited on that, because that was a good. That battle scene was just fantastic, and we'll get to that as well. So I appreciated they give title cards for wherever they were. I liked that, the way that. And one thing about the making of this film, the transitions from scene to scene were beautiful. Well thought out, and I really appreciated that. And I haven't read that in any of the reviews or anything, but I loved how they would go. There I go again. How it would transition scene to scene using one little thing. I like the Easter eggs of a Cthulhu book that were there, and just really appreciated how much dignity he gave to the story of Atlantis. I really did.
And you're speaking of Easter eggs, just really more of just a minor thing that I noticed during the first battle between Arthur and Orm, where they're getting in this gladiator arena, and there's this digital overlay like they do on the UFC, with the tail of the tape, and under Arthur it says Khans is a surface dweller, and then like there's something else, and at the bottom drunk, which I thought was great. So you've talked about it several times now, so let's bring it up now. The visuals on this film. Let's talk about James Wan and how he took the concept of Atlantis, which I think, in my opinion, from the beginning of this whole project when it was first announced, was my biggest concern about the movie, is how do you make this look the way it looks in the comics? How do you make it feel lived in and not feel artificial? I gotta say, as far as the outside of perhaps Infinity War and Black Panther this year, the Marvel outings, I don't know that I've seen a more visually impressive movie in 2018 than Aquaman. It really floored me at times. The way that the underwater kingdom looked, obviously the surface sets were really good too, but this was all about how the underseas kingdom looks, the lost kingdom of Atlantis, all of these different, the different kingdoms under that realm. It was incredible to watch, to see these different creatures come together. Every time Arthur had to summon a sea creature, it looked wonderful. The battle sequences here were outstanding. Both of the fights with Orm were great. The Black Mana fight was great. The battle between the Atlanteans and the Brine was great. The trench scene on the boat was really good, with Arthur and Mira diving in with the flare to lead the trench away, or really lead them after them. That was phenomenal. I think it's certainly, in my opinion, I would say this is one element that does give it one edge that it does have over Wonder Woman, even though I think Wonder Woman is probably maybe a little bit better overall. I think this movie visually is the best of the DCEU to this point, in my opinion anyway. What did you guys think of it?
I would tend to agree with that. Yeah, I thought, particularly when they were doing anything undersea, it was outstanding. Again, as I mentioned earlier, managing to visually distinguish one kingdom from another, managing to see a variety of sea life, particularly as they were used in the action sequences. I got to admit, not even being a big fan of the Super Friends cartoon or of Silver Age Aquaman, but when Arthur is riding the giant seahorse near the end of the film, I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because I was like, it's just one of those things you never thought you would see presented in a somewhat straightforward fashion. It's just utter ridiculousness that works in the context of the film.
I embarrassed my family with that.
Like, it wasn't just that it was cool to see, it actually looked good. Like, the giant seahorse they did a good job of designing that model. The octopus playing the drums, the aforementioned, as you mentioned, both battle sequences I thought were expertly done in terms of CGI. Just everything about it, really. The trench creatures, I would agree. The DCEU films in general at this point, even Wonder Woman, which we've all talked about our love for Wonder Woman, but I think the one thing we can all agree on is that, especially in the final battle, it kind of slips a little bit because the CGI isn't as believable as some other big budget action films we've seen. That problem doesn't exist here, in my mind. The CGI never really slips, except for a couple of occasions on the Willem Dafoe de-aging, but that's admittedly a very hard thing to master, and it's very minimal. Like, that's the only thing I would really nitpick if you held a gun to my head. So, yeah, visually, this was outstanding, and I hope this provides a nice platform that they can expound upon in future work, because this is the first DC film I have seen since Wonder Woman that I actively want to see a sequel. I want to see more of this. I think they have an opportunity to take this foundation and improve upon it going forward.
This is the kind of visual imagination that Green Lantern needed when they made it in 2011. Yes,
absolutely.
Todd, the visuals, your thoughts?
This is one of the best effects movies ever made, as far as execution-wise. None of it made me go, oh, they cheaped out. Oh, this is bad CGI. There were so many CGI shots for this film, and they added to the story. I want to see it again because I was so busy following one track that there's all this other stuff in the background that your eye can't even take it in. It's like looking at the stars at night. There's so much going on that you want to see it again. I am so happy that they put in the extra time and got the extra budget to do that because you beat me to the point on Wonder Woman. That ending battle with Ares takes me out of it a whole bunch and lessens the impact of the movie. That was not a problem here. In fact, this had the best ending battle sequence of any of the DCEU movies to date. And we're not going to debate the broken neck thing, but that's a different aspect of the story. This was very successfully visual, and the octopus playing drums, that's a throwback to the Silver Age when Aquaman had a recurring octopus sidekick named Topo who could play musical instruments. So that's a slight homage there. I know. Well, it was the Silver Age.
No, it's Silver Age. Like, yeah, not Aquaman specific. So,
yeah, and I think Jeff Johns has even done a nod to that character. So, visually, I am so happy with the film. The stuff underwater, the light underwater, just so cool.
Them not trying to replicate the weird underwater like sound effect when people talked from Justice League, like just presenting it fairly normally, I thought was.
Turns out James Wan was right when somebody asked him, "How are you going to have them talk underwater?" And he said, "They're just going to talk underwater."
Yep, just buy in.
It worked so much better. That it was like you said the light, Ty, and that really stood out to me. Like it felt like Atlantis, like you saw on Momoa's face this sense of wonder when he's going through there, and it felt like as an audience member there was a sense of wonder and awe. It reminded me of in Star Wars movies when you've gone to some of the more exotic planets for the very first time, and the first time you go to Cloud City, and it's like, wow, look at this is crazy, this is awesome. It kind of felt that way. It's such a visual achievement, and it really stands out beyond some of the sort of, I think, good but kind of uninventive comic book worlds and sets that we've kind of gotten used to from both Marvel, especially DC, but even with Marvel, where sometimes the worlds are not as visually distinct as you might hope. But in here, it's just it's amazing. So yeah, great stuff here. Any moments or battles or just scenes in general that stood out to you guys that you wanted to talk about before we start wrapping up?
No, I think we've pretty well covered it. I mean, all the action scenes were great. Just overall, a really solid film. Something that was struggled a bit with dialogue at times, I thought, and needs a little bit more development of certain characters, but all of that overall is overcome by outstanding action scenes, good charisma and chemistry from its lead performers, and just a general visual take on Atlantis in this world that really works for me. So, not the best, not up to some of the better offerings from the MCU or something like that, but a really nice entry in a flawed DC slate so far. And something that provides, hopefully, a nice jumping off point for a sequel that can that can take the positives from this film and improve upon those while righting what few wrongs this film has. So, thumbs up for me.
Todd?
Movie was a tremendous amount of fun. I've been listening to the geeks and fellow people who really love Aquaman, and this was maybe our one shot at getting an Aquaman movie. The circumstances had to be just right. They did very well to make it palatable, entertaining to the masses. So I'm very happy about that. It did have its flaws. Maybe I'm being nitpicky at certain things, but overall, a tremendous success. I'm glad it's making money. $500 million already in 1 week of release. And only 120 of that's come from the U.S., so it's doing very well overseas, and which means there's a lot of lonely housewives all over the world, which is great. So yeah, I'm thrilled with the film. Want to see it again. I'm all in, and especially when he put on the costume. I did, he saw it in the trailer, but he was able to be Aquaman, and I absolutely dug the heck out of him in the costume and buying that, and with the trident, and it was super cool to see something I love treated with this amount of respect, resources, and love from the creators too. I'm stoked for an eventual sequel.
What did your family think of it?
Kids liked it quite a bit. They're talking about it here and there. Corey really liked it, so yeah, They were very happy for me. I think they were kind of the same way that PTBN comics staff are. Oh, you didn't like it? Okay, well, all right, fine. But if I had not liked it, they would have been not as afraid to voice their opinion. But no, they dug it too. Part of it for them was seeing me get super excited, and like I said, when he got on the seahorse, I stood up and pumped my fist. And I'm a 46-year-old man. That doesn't happen too often where I get that caught up into things. But I was really excited for just the, like I keep saying, the respect and love shown to this character on screen, and that people were embracing him, seeing very cool things about Aquaman. And he did not throw a whiskey bottle into the ocean in this movie, because. Which is the thing that really got Aquaman would never ever pollute, and so we're gonna go
absolutely
with that.
Yeah, tremendous, man. I actually really enjoyed it too. I tempered my expectations going into this. I thought the trailers were all pretty good, but I was not sure what to make of it. And I thought, with some dialogue that we talked about earlier aside, I thought it was really, really good. And it, as an Aquaman fan and as a DC fan, it made me feel good to see a movie that was this much fun to watch. It's been a while for us as DC fans, since Wonder Woman, in fact. It was a level of joy and a level of, and I think it shined through for the lead role of Momoa. He had a fun time playing Aquaman, and I think that came through on the screen. So yeah, thumbs up from me as well. And my mom, who she loves the Marvel movies, like she adores the MCU, and she's been very she hasn't seen Wonder Woman yet, but she's been very dismissive of the DC movies that she's seen. She wasn't really excited about seeing this, but she came out of it and she said, my expectations were really low, but that was awesome. I loved it. So she liked it even more than I did. And she said that she especially liked that there were two love stories in it, and that she bought into both of them. So that was cool. So anyway, Aquaman gets thumbs up from all three of us. Good job on James Wan's part for really writing the ship of Arthur Curry and hopefully steering the DC universe into a positive direction.
They have got to get him back for the sequel. I know that there were rumors
100%.
abounded throughout this production process that there were a couple of different times where the hot rumor was he was about to leave the production, and he wound up sticking both times. And, always there are unfounded rumors, but oftentimes where there's a little bit of smoke, there's a little bit of fire. And I hope whatever happened during the production of this film did not sour him on the idea of doing another one, because I'm very concerned about the idea of handing it off to anyone else. The one thing that comes through in this film is he had a true respect for the character and a desire to do right by the character, and he wanted to make this film a success. And the passion in the filmmaking comes through on screen. So I do not want to see a replacement at director. I think that would get the sequel off on the wrong foot.
Agreed completely. One thing that I didn't mention during the course of the review that is a minor quibble that I had. What did you guys think about the music in the movie? Because I did not really like the sort of comedic musical cues for the moments that were supposed to be funny. I think that's kind of largely that's largely unnecessary in modern filmmaking, I think. But what did you guys think of that?
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, well, Warner Brothers is a music giant. They have the rights to lots of songs. I thought maybe they were trying to be clever, and boy, do I not like that version of Toto's Africa. But
no, oh, man.
So, yeah, I don't know. I would have been okay with Sting's Desert Rain or something like that instead. But yeah, I liked most of the score. Veering into Glenn Butler territory. I enjoyed the score, but when the pop songs would go in, I wasn't nuts about it. The Roy Orbison song was really weird for me too. They were trying to do a meet cute or a they fall in love naturally in Sicily scene with that. So I don't know. Do you guys know the song I'm talking about?
Yeah. Because I actually knew. I didn't even know it was a Roy Orbison song. I knew a cover version of that song, and I can't remember who did I can't remember what the name of the song is now. But
yeah, that's a 30-year-old song with the not a lot of people know about. U2 play on that song. So
yes, U2 is the one that I was thinking of. I have the U2 recording of that.
Yeah, they recorded that song with him on Mystery Girl. The song is She's a Mystery to Me, but the chorus is Mystery Girl. So they're trying to tell that story of Mira through the music. The pop stuff was brief, honestly, so it didn't bug me all that much.
Yeah, I would agree with basically what Todd said. When it tried to do a traditional superhero score, I enjoyed it. And when it tried to work in more contemporary pop songs, I did not. So that would be my assessment of the music, brief as it may be.
Yes. And Todd, real quick, want to give you a chance to talk about James Wan. I'm assuming you want him back for the sequel as well.
No question. Don't give me any. Don't make the movie if it's not going to be. If you're not going to give him free reign. Just like Patty Jenkins with Wonder Woman, this is the character. This is the director that executed their vision and was. I'm sure there was studio interference here and there, but Wan was able to take the Jeff Johns bones and the Jason Momoa charisma and turn it into a really good soup. So I enjoyed that quite a bit, and I hope that Warner Brothers doesn't mess it up, and we get to have a Aquaman 2 versus Black Manta, and hopefully more of the Trench, because they did not. They were barely in the film, and I was led to believe they were going to be a bigger thing. But it was enough of an introduction that you get the idea.
That's a great. That's an amazing that we were on the same wavelength, because I was about to ask you. Is there anything in particular that you want to see in the sequel that we didn't see in this one?
No, I want to see King Arthur and how he rules, and maybe him taking more of an ownership of the eco story, the environmentalism aspect of things, because that's always been part of Aquaman for me. Mm-hmm. So I want to see maybe more of that, and I'm excited that there's a lot. All these pieces are still on the board to tell your next story. So let's hope, and I'm thinking it will happen, but maybe down the road. Maybe 2022.
Yeah, probably so. That seems like a safe bet. That's a good number to space it out and give them time to make it right. What about you, Nick? Anything in particular that you want to see in a sequel that we didn't see in this one?
Development of Black Manta, make him more of a both mental and physical threat to Arthur. As I mentioned earlier, I want to see kind of a reclamation of that character's menace level. I want to see a continuing development of Mira as well, develop her closer and closer to the version that we know from modern day comics. And also, as I said earlier, I want to see a continuation of the development of the relationship between Arthur and Worm. In general, I just want to see this move more and more towards the versions of the characters that I've grown to know in the last, 6 or so years. So, good foundation. Excited to see where they go from here.
Question before we move on. Does changing Mira into just an Atlantean affect anything for you guys, as opposed to an extra-dimensional princess?
Not for me. I kind of like it, actually. I like Zebul being tied to Atlantis, but being kind of a separate kingdom.
Right.
The extra-dimensional thing, while it works in the comics for sure, was always going to be a little bit harder to get across, I think, in a movie. So for me, it works. And I still think that there's a chance later on if they wanted to revisit that element that Jeff Johns played with, if you remember, where she was actually sent to kill Arthur at one point, and kind of broke from that. I think there's a lot of potential for where they can go with her in the future.
And they could tell that story about Zebul too. Like, they could retcon it, or we could find out that they're not actually part of Atlantis proper. There's places they can go with it. I think they needed her to be such a key aspect of the story that she needs to be established before he is. And so instead of her reacting to him, it's him reacting to her. And you know what I mean?
Right. Good stuff. Good points all around. Well, with that being said, folks, we want to hear your thoughts on Aquaman. We want you to tweet us. I am at gphillips8652. He is at Nick Duke 87. Todd, you are at Todd. Wait, let me make sure. You just say it, because I'm afraid I'll mess it up.
At JR's BBQ on Twitter. It's at Todd Weber Guitar. And like everything, every time I make an appearance here, you will be subjected to basketball opinions and political opinions, as well as pop culture ones.
Indeed. And of course, all three of us are available to be reached at the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page. Just type in Place to Be Nation Comics on your Facebook search bar. You can also find us at PTBN Comics on Twitter. And there are email addresses as well, but let's face it, those are not getting checked. Todd, what do you have coming down the pipe? Where can people hear your lovely voice?
I am one of the Sarcastic Four, along with Mr. Duke. I am part of the Marvel Age podcast, and in the next month or so, we'll be getting into 1969. Nice.
Ooh, the summer of something. Not love, but
the Manson family murders.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that. I was going to say mutual oral pleasure, but that too.
Or Bryan Adams getting his first real six string.
Now that's I'm glad you brought that up, Todd. That's something I've been wondering about for years. Does the chronology of that song work?
No.
Wouldn't Bryan Adams have been in his mid-40s? Yeah, he would have been in his mid-40s if that song was accurate.
Yeah, he was about 6 years old in 1969.
So basically, Bryan Adams was full of shit in that song, is what you're telling me.
It's almost like somebody else wrote it for him.
Don't trust that acne-scarred, pockmarked Bryan Adams, filthy Canadian that he is.
Hey, I did like that song that he did where it had like the Zorro music video where it's like To Really Love a Woman or whatever. It's like black and white. Yeah, that was a good song in its day.
Oh, he had some good albums.
He did.
The anthem of my 9th grade school dance, Baby, You're All That I Want. You're lying here in my arms and finding it hard to believe we're in heaven. What a great slow dance song that was.
Yeah, it was. Somebody covered that song when I was in high school, and it became a slow dance song. I don't know, a woman singer, and I can't remember her name. But it was mildly successful. Nick, you probably remember that version.
What's that?
That song, Baby, You're All That I Want When You're Lying There in My Arms. Nope. Something heaven.
Nope. I don't.
It was almost like well, you might remember George Jones's classic, I Kissed My Baby with My Fist.
Well, now those are all allegations, unsubstantiated allegations from Miss Wynette.
All right. Well, with that being said, folks, I believe that it's about time for us to wrap up here at the Hard-Traveling Studios.
Domestic abuse is always funny.
Especially in the South.
Oh, country music, ladies and gentlemen. Where would we be without it? Well, for Nick Duke and for Todd Weber. Oh, wait. Wait just a moment. I'm getting word that
time-honored tradition.
No time. There's a time-honored tradition on these here airwaves, Greg, that quite frankly, I think you and Mr. Ross are going to have to come to some sort of understanding. I think there's a little bit of a feud between the two of you in terms of the attention that this aspect of the podcast has received, because you're always trying to send us home too early and not leaving time for our new tradition of finishing up the show with a musical guest appearance from WWE Hall of Famer Jim Ross. And as you all know, the Christmas time, we've just had a wonderful Christmas. We are barreling towards the new year. And so, I got to thinking about songs that reminded me of good New Year's past. And one of my favorite New Year's that we ever had when I was coming up was the year that we celebrated the new millennium. And so I thought, what about a song in memory of that? So, ladies and gentlemen, here to perform for you Prince's 1999, I give you good old JR, Jim Ross.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. I really appreciate you letting me on the show here. I too, am on the road like Phillips is, going down to Miami, to the Orange Bowl, to watch my Sooners whoop some ass once more. And you know what? If they don't win, it's still going to be Boomer Sooner. Baker Mayfield's still winning games the last time I checked. But anyway, that's besides the point here. Here is what I'm here to sing about. I was dreaming when I wrote this, forgive me if it goes astray. But when I woke up this morning, well, I could have sworn it was Judgment Day, maybe even Backlash. The sky was all purple like the dead man's gloves. There were people running everywhere, trying to run from the destruction, for God's sake. Old JR didn't even care. Say, 2000, party over, oops, I'm out of time. So tonight, I'm going to party as if it were 1999. Now, 1999 is a funny year, folks. A lot of things happened that year. The Rock rose to prominence. WrestleMania 15 was a big night for me. I came back after I had my second bout of Bell's palsy, and I came back and I announced the main event between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in a sold-out arena. It was a great night. Anyway, I was dreaming when I wrote this, so sue me if I go too fast. But life is just a part, and parties were not meant to last. Now, a good example of that is Gino Hernandez. His party ended much too soon, but it was his demons and not the industry that did that to him. War is all around us. My mind says prepare to fight. So if I gotta die, I'm gonna listen to my body tonight. My body says I could use a little JR's barbecue. Main event mustard, mid-card mayonnaise, the whole work. Yeah, hey, so they say that 2000, party over, oops, you're out of time. Well, tonight I'm going to party like it's 1999 and we are taking over the Monday Night War, about to put WCW out of business just a few short years away. Wonder who put that roster together. I don't know. Must have been decent. Anyway, people, let me tell you something. If you didn't come here to party, don't you bother knocking on my door. I have got a lion in my pocket, and baby, he is ready to roar. Yeah, everybody's got a bomb. We can all die any day. Oh, yeah, everybody says that on the internet. I hear it. But before I let that happen, I am going to dance my ass away. Oh, ho. They say 2000, party over, oops, out of time. So tonight I'm going to party like it's 1999. Now you're going to say it one more time, and can you argue with this? Can you disagree with this? Hell no. 2000, party over, out of time. Tonight we're going to party 1999. You get it, all right? I'm not going to say it all these other times. That's all I'm going to say. I'm finished. You're beating the chorus into the ground. Listen to what I am trying to say. Everybody, say all that shit I just said. And with that being said, folks, Mommy, why does everybody have a bomb? Mother, why does everybody have a bomb?
Well kept. He would tell her to put on a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, go take a 2-mile jog, and then come back and see him when she was done.
I believe it was quite sudden and painful.
Thank you.
Hard-Traveling Fanboys,
Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Hard-Traveling Fanboys.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
PlayStation Nation's Justin Rosero and Chad Kimball here. We want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlayStation.com, and we now offer them to you on two great feeds. On the PlayStation Wrestling feed, we bring you the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, Main Event, Survey Says, Wrestling Warzone, a Monday Night Wars podcast retrospective, No Holds Barred, Jeff Learns Wrestling, and our monthly pay-per-view reaction shows. On top of that, we're also dipping into the vault, re-releasing the entire catalog of where the big boys play for your enjoyment. In addition to these full-length shows, we also deliver special network pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is loaded with great content, offering such tremendous shows covering the land of pop culture, such as Geek and Sassy, Talkin' Pop, the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Sunday Groove, PTB in Play, Freak Out Drive-In, Songs with Friends, Looking Forward, Looking Back, and Lucha Undead, as well as a veritable podcast heaven for comics fans with the Hard-Traveling Fanboys, Sellers Points, Conversation Comics, DC Post-Crisis Management, Marvel Age, and Marvel Age Masterclass, plus weekly pod blasts that cover the gamut of comic topics. The feed is also filled with insightful sports content, including the NBA team, This Week in the NFL, and more.
And you can find all these current shows, plus archives of our past podcasts, including The Kevin Kelly Show, as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others available at PlayStation.com. We cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, in-depth stretch projects, and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlayStation.com/Amazon while doing your online shopping. And download our free PTB Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on our site. We also want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlayStation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.